I just realized I'm wearing basically the exact same outfit I wore during my last recording session. I promise I don't wear the same clothes every single day. Anyway, still sick, which sucks. Still trying to get some stuff recorded ahead of time, since I'm going to be out of town for a little over a week. And it's going to make it impossible to record stuff during that week, and also hard to record stuff right when I get back, because I won't have had time to prepare anything. So I'm trying to get some stuff out of the way now. I promise I did change my clothes, though, since yesterday when I recorded some of that other stuff that you guys have been seeing lately. Now, I just thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, today we are looking at some spoopy stuff, guys, because it's Halloween month, and we're jumping back to a couple of years ago on Netflix to talk about The Haunting of Hill House, which is an adaptation of a book by the same name by Shirley Jackson. It's a gothic horror novel, which I read years ago, and I'm 100% sure I'm forgetting details from it. It has also received 2 movie adaptations, one in 63 and one in 99. And even though the 99 version has Liam Neeson and Catherine Zeta-Jones in it, the 1963 version is infinitely better. I have also seen both of those. Again, it's been a while, and it's been a few months since I rewatched the show too. But this is a memorable enough show that I feel like I can still talk about it, especially since I'm gonna have to be kind of vague in this review. This is the kind of show that you don't just miff people by spoiling it for them. You straight up ruin the show for them by spoiling it for them. So I'm gonna have to be really careful what I say in this one. I'm gonna go over some themes real quickly, and then gush about, well, I don't know yet. I haven't worked that part of the review out yet. I'm going to gush a little bit, and then I'm going to be done. It's going to be a quick and dirty one. But if you guys want to know right out the gate whether or not this is worth watching, if you guys know anything about the source material, maybe you're a fan and you were wondering if this was a worthwhile adaptation. Adaptation is a bit of a strong word. They definitely take some liberties with this one. But I would definitely watch it. I would definitely watch it if you like gothic horror. It's really good. It's a really good show. Like, if you don't want to risk being spoiled on anything, then just go watch the show right now. It has my endorsement 100%. It's one of my favorite Netflix series of all time. Possibly one of my favorite series of all time in general. Now, in the source material, and did it make it into the 1963 adaptation? It had to have, right? It was definitely in the 1999 adaptation. But anyway, the whole point was, the house was being used. A bunch of people were invited to Hill House, and they were being used to research the supernatural. That's not what this show is about. This show is about a family that moves to Hill House because the parents flip houses. Like the people in all those HGTV reality shows. They flip houses so they can be resold. And Hill House is in disrepair. They want to flip it and resell it, so they move in there with their kids, and their kids are parallels to characters from the book. For the most part, anyway. There's some leeway taken there. There's some leeway taken there throughout the entire basic premise of the show as it relates back to the premise of the book that it's based on. But stuff like supernatural occurrences and psychic powers, and like psychic awareness in the characters, those things are taken from the book and transplanted to the kid characters, who are also adult characters in the show, because this show is told through flashbacks. And I know what some of you guys are going to say. Wow, that style of storytelling is really annoying. It can be super frustrating, but I promise you it's not here. It works super well. They telegraph very, very well what time period you're in. They don't try to trick you. And the kid actors who play parallel to the adult actors who play the same characters as the corresponding adult actors are all fantastic. They're all great. And the parents are fantastic. The mom in particular. Can't remember the actress's name. I'll put a picture of her up so you guys know who I'm talking about. She's absolutely great. By far, though, my favorite character in the entire series, kid and adult, is Theodora, who is, of course, parallel to the Theodora from the book and the other adaptations, played by Kate Siegel. She's just the best. Like, I'm getting into spoiler territory here, but I have to talk about this a little bit. Every single one of these characters is troubled. You can read the various mental issues they go through. as various things, as various mental health things, as mental health issues brought on by traumatic events, even though they have a supernatural cause, and it is the supernatural which causes them to persist. It's clear that the parallel is meant to be drawn between these things and actual mental health issues and actual trauma, which is pretty cool. Like, there's no one-to-one comparisons here, right? Because this is still a supernatural horror show at the end of the day. There's still supernatural elements at play, but like, one of the siblings, for example, has addiction issues brought about by the trauma from his past. And while that trauma is supernatural in nature, the real problems that it causes for him in his real life, his everyday life, are relatable to real people. And they're treated respectfully. Like, again, there have to be some liberties taken here and there to make the supernatural side of things work. But I feel like it works. And by the end, the story even has hopeful notes to it. The moral of the story ends up being that it is possible to recover. It is possible to recover from your past traumas and move on towards a brighter future, which I liked a lot. Like, this is a ghost story. It's a horror story. But at the end of the day, it's a story about these people. And so, at the end of the day, the people prove strong enough to overcome. And these people could be any of us. So the message ends up being, we are strong enough to overcome. And I love that a lot. I love horror in general, but I prefer horror where the good guys have a chance of overcoming the horrific element. I don't like hopeless horror, and this is not that. But if the show has any protagonist at all, it is Theo. All these characters have some limited degree of psychic ability. That is something that's brought over from the source material. Psychic powers exist in this universe. But Theo, her powers are interesting. I'm not going to spoil what they are or how she uses them specifically, but she does use them. She is, at least as far as I recall, the only one of the kids who uses her psychic abilities by choice. And even though the nature of her psychic powers means that there is a risk of her being re-traumatized every time she uses them, there's also the possibility that she can help people by using them, so she does. She is by far the most heroic character in this story, and I ended up gravitating to her the most because of that. She's just pretty great. The themes from the original story of the house being sort of its own entity and of obsession, not just like the house being obsessed with these people, but the people coming to be obsessed with the house, those are all there. And the twists and turns in this show are absolutely fantastic. Nothing is what it seems, but none of the twists feel unearned after the fact. In fact, I got one of them, which I guess was supposed to be the big twist of the season, pretty early on. I figured out what was happening pretty early on with that one, because the groundwork for it was already laid. It had been laid by past episodes. The clues to determine these twists, to work out these twists, are already there. It's just you're more likely to see them in hindsight than you are your first time through, which makes this show rewatchable. It's worth rewatching this show at least once so you can pick up on these clues in retrospect. It's also quite tense and quite scary, though I will admit that as the season goes on, or series, I guess you could call this a series too, because each of these haunting seasons are technically miniseries. As the series goes on, I will admit there's sort of a diminishing effect. The horror elements, the fright factor of them diminishes, because as you start to understand the rules of this universe and the motivations of the supernatural entities involved in the story, they stop being as mysterious, and so they stop being as scary. So if you're looking for something that is just utterly terrifying the whole way through, this may not be the show for you, unless you don't overanalyze things the way that I do, in which case maybe this won't bother you as much as it bothered me. Not that it even bothered me. It didn't even really bother me that much. I was just aware of it, right? If that sounds like something that would bother you, maybe you won't get as much out of this show as I did, is what I'm saying. But that still does nothing to diminish the atmosphere of the show or lower the stakes. Like, there are still real stakes for these characters. And it ends up being a lot of fun to see them learn the rules of this universe for themselves as well, and overcome some of these issues that are plaguing them. I also want to point out, and maybe this is just me because I am a fan of this work, but the specific take on Hill House and on what it wanted from the family reminded me a lot of, and I can't tell you what it is, I can't give you the title, because if I do and you know it, it may actually spoil a twist in this show. But it reminded me of one of those creepypastas, not like the really cliche common ones, but one of the ones that the author tried to treat it as if it could be real, and it grew into its own thing for a while. And I'm going to put a link to it in the description so you guys can go read it. It's one of my favorites. But it definitely felt like that some of the specific elements of this show could have been taken from some of the specific elements of that work. Like, I'd believe you if you told me that that were the case. But again, I might be reading too much into this. I might be reading too much into small details that really mean nothing, because I am a fan of the work. Again, I will let you guys go read it for yourselves and see what you think. That said, I'm sitting here trying to think of things to criticize this season 4. An actor who didn't really quite fit their role, a plot point that didn't really go anywhere or didn't feel like it belonged, and I can't think of any. Like, I can think of some things that might bother some people. Like, this is written almost like a play a lot of the time. Characters will soliloquy to the audience, the camera will zoom in real close to them, focus on just them, and they will give a long monologue from time to time. Like, other characters will be there listening, but it's effectively a soliloquy. And that kind of blocking, that kind of direction might bother some people, but I loved it, because it gave the actors, all of whom are very strong, I remind you, chances to really strut their stuff, to really show off how well they could carry a scene entirely upon their own presence. So while this show might not be for everyone, at least for somebody like me who appreciates this style of storytelling, who likes gothic horror and horror in general, this is almost a perfect show for me. So if you feel like your tastes might align with me here, and you haven't watched this show, this is definitely one to watch. Though, I'm releasing this review when I am, not just because we're coming up on Halloween, but because also the second series in the Haunting anthology has been released, The Haunting of Bly Manor, which is based on Turn of the Screw. It dropped on Netflix recently, and I feel like, one, that gives me another opportunity to release this review when people might actually be looking for it, because the release of that show might have brought people's interest back to this one, right? But also, I want you guys to know, if you want to skip this show for whatever reason, even for just the time being, but you want to watch Bly Manor, you absolutely can. The two shows do not tie into each other at all. There may be like shared universe details that I haven't picked up on yet, but the plots of these do not depend on each other at all. So if you want to watch Bly Manor first, or you have watched Bly Manor and you're worried that something in that will ruin your enjoyment of this show, you don't have to worry about that at all. But I still think you should watch this show. It's very, very good. It is one of the most intricately woven stories that I've ever seen attempted in a television medium, and it works spectacularly. It is atmospheric, it's creepy, and it's hopeful, which is such a cool little trifecta of things that I absolutely love in my televised media. In fact, between all of the kid characters who exist in this work and the fact that they do stand a chance of learning the rules of this universe and learning to fight back against the supernatural forces at work, despite the fact that this is meant for mature audiences, obviously, it almost had a similar tone to it as something like Gravity Falls, which, I mean, you guys know I'm always chasing that kind of tone anyway in the stuff I'm watching, so perhaps that is why I gravitated towards this show as much as I did. Who knows? But if you guys don't really know anything of any of the other works that I compared this to in this review, maybe that comparison will get you to watch it, where the other stuff I've said didn't. But you should watch this. I want to repeat, you should watch this. It's not a show for kids. It's not the kind of show I typically cover on my channel. Like, don't watch this with your kids unless they're grown. But do watch it. It's very good. As per usual, though, I'd like to know, what did you guys think of The Haunting of Hill House, if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.